Welcome to Social Studies at the Center.
Miss Ritchie.
Miss Bickmore, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I noticed you have a voted sticker.
Yeah, I just finished voting in the primary elections.
The primary elections? I don't vote in those. I just do the general.
Really? I think that the primary elections are really important because we get a vote for those candidates that we want to see in the general elections. And then we can kind of do our research and figure out whose beliefs we really agree with.
Oh, interesting. I can see how that's very important.
Yeah, I think that it's a really cool thing that we're able to do in our country.
Maybe I should do some more research on that.
Yeah, well, it was really good to see you. Well, hopefully we'll see you again soon.
It was very good to see you as well.
You've probably guessed, we're talking a little about voting today. Another word for voting is election. In fact, sometimes you might elect to ride your bike or jump on the trampoline. Election is a word that you can use for voting or choosing. Have you ever wondered about voting at home? Sometimes I've thought to myself, it might be nice if we had a vote about things in our home. For example, I know I would vote to not have green beans ever again. Maybe let's think about dinner for just a minute. Wouldn't it be nice if each of us could vote each time we were going to have dinner? Maybe we could vote on what time dinner would be, or we could vote on what would be for dinner. I can imagine maybe my mom or my dad bringing me a menu each morning, and I could sit there and decide my vote for dinner tonight is, and I could choose something off the menu, or I could even create my own menu. I could let my parents know this is what I think I'd like for dinner. Well, I can imagine even a slogan that I might use as I try to get other people to vote for dinner as well. I think my slogan might be pie, cake, and T-bone steak. I can imagine that being my dinner slogan if we could vote for dinner. Pie, cake, and T-bone steak. But now I'm thinking about it, I wonder, would other people get a vote too? And what if I got outvoted? What if the other people in my family wanted something that I didn't want, and then I never got to have anything I like? Now I'm starting to wonder if voting is such a great idea. I'm thinking about, well, what if we voted on who cleaned up dinner? And what if my family always voted for me to be the person to clean up? Or what if we voted and I always got voted to be the person who had to do all the inside chores and other people got to do the outside chores? I'm starting to wonder if voting in a home might be complicated and messy. So now I'm thinking about voting in society as well, in our communities. I'm wondering how voting works and when do we get to vote and what do we get to vote on? Maybe there's more I could learn about words like democracy and elections and voting and candidates.
Hi everybody, my name is Mrs. Holt, and today I would like to go over the elections vocabulary that we have that you see right next to me. So the first couple things that I want us to really think about, what do these words mean? What can they mean for society, for government? Have you heard of these words before? So let's get our thinking caps on as we go ahead and talk about these vocabulary terms. So the first one is democracy. Now, democracy is a type of government. It's a type of government that is run by the citizens of our country, which means that you get the chance to participate in voting and seeing the candidates and really playing a key role in how our government is run. Now, the next term is election. Election is when a big group of people vote to place someone into a role or a job in our government or the democracy. An election is important. You'll be able to get to participate in the election when you're old enough. And when you do this, it'll be something super cool, and you're going to want to tell everybody about it. I know I did when I participated in my first election. The next word is candidate. Now, a candidate is a person, a single person, who wants to be chosen for a particular job in the government. So that might be, I want to be a candidate for mayor. I want to be a candidate for the United States president. That's what a candidate is. They go up to share their ideas and thoughts on what they can do to improve our government. And campaign. Campaign is another important term that we learn when we talk about elections. A campaign is a plan of action or different events that are used to help reach a specific goal. Now, this goes again with everything else that we just talked about. So, a candidate would go up and say, I would like you to vote for me because I would like to have soda machines in the school hallways. And that's kind of what a campaign is, sharing their ideas and beliefs with you. So that way they get your vote so they can have that specific job or title in the government. Now, there's another 3 words that we haven't talked about yet that I want you to kind of think about. Mayor, governor, and president. Now, why are these 3 terms important, and how do they play a role in elections? Well, a mayor is a leader of a city or town, so a smaller unit in the grand picture of society. So they take over, well, they don't take over, but they help run like Rexburg or Boise, Idaho, little places like those. And then you have the governor. Now, a governor is a person who leads the entire state government. And they usually sit or live near the capital of the state. So we have a governor of Idaho, and that person is in Boise, as you see in this map here. And then the last term that we have for elections is the president. Now, we've all heard of the president, right? We know who the president is. A president is a person who is chosen to be in charge of the country's government and military. Now, they go through all the steps of elections. They decide they want to be a candidate, and then they go through the campaigning and the elections, so the votes, and really putting their voice out there. And our president today is President Joe Biden, and he's the 46th U.S. president. How cool is that? We've had 46 U.S. presidents. Now I wonder who's going to be the next president. Maybe you will get to be president one day. That would be awesome. Now, the last part that I want to kind of talk about that you've probably already heard of, but I feel like it's important just to kind of discuss a little bit, is the difference between primary elections and general elections and what really that means. So, a primary election happens kind of in the off time of the year, kind of random, like summertime. Primary election really has to do with different parties of people and who they want to see go up as candidate for bigger offices. So a primary election is where voters can choose who they prefer to be candidate. So there's different parties, Republicans, Democrats. I'm sure you've heard of those kind of terms before. And they go up and say, I would like this person to be our candidate for our party. And the other party would say, I want this candidate to represent us in the general election. So the primary election happens before the big general election. When the general election happens, that happens in the month of November, usually the second Tuesday of the month. And that's where all the people all over the US get to vote and decide who they would like to see as the US president.
All right, so now that we've learned a little bit about how an election works and how it works to be able to elect people and ideas into the government and run the democracy, we're going to jump a little bit deeper into how this is happening in the state of Idaho right now. Idaho just is getting so close to having a general election. We already had the primary elections at the end of May, and now our general elections are coming up on November 8th. And so that means that all of the adults and all of your parents are going to have the opportunity to vote. And so how are they going to vote? What are they going to vote on? Let's look a little bit more into that and share this screen of everything it has on our ballot. So right here we have a sample of the ballot in the county of Madison for Idaho. And so we can see when we scroll around that there are so many people and so many offices. We have offices for state, like the state treasurer, who's going to be taking care of all of the money in Idaho. We have offices at a district level where that's going to look different depending on where you live. Each district is going to be voting in different people to represent their small area at the state of Idaho at the Capitol in Boise. But the one that I want to look into for a little bit is the candidate for governor. So right here, we can see that we have 5 people in this row for people to vote for governor. And then we also have another option of a write-in. But how do people choose? How do they know which person is going to be the best person? Because as we learned earlier, the governor is a super important role for this state because they're the ones who are going to be in charge of the whole state government. And so let's look a little bit closer into each of these candidates' campaigns. And so we're going to hop off of the ballot and jump right into this slide that has each of these candidates. So we can see that our first candidate is a man named Ammon Bundy. And his slogan to try to get voters to agree with him is to keep Idaho, Idaho. And that's what he wants voters to think about when they're thinking about voting him. And our next person that we have is our only woman who's running for governor. And we have Shanty Rose Davison, and she's running for the Constitutional Party. And the Constitution Party, they just want the Constitution to be preserved and to be used in government today. And so her slogan is a little bit reflective of that. And she wants people to think that if she's voted for governor, she's going to be standing up for the Constitution and for the people of Idaho. And our next candidate that we have is a man called Stephen Height. And he is the one who won the primary election for the Democratic Party in Idaho. And he wants people to know that he's going to be an agent of change when they vote for him. And moving on to our fourth person, we have Brad Little running for governor. And he's our current governor of Idaho. And so what he wants people to know is that he has experienced leadership that Idaho can trust. He wants voters to think that he already knows how to be governor because he has been the governor before. And our last candidate who's on the ballot for governor this year is a man named Paul Sand. And Paul Sand wants voters to know that he is going to be focusing on family, freedom, and future as he's the governor for Idaho and making decisions for everyone in the state. And so as you can see, these 5 slogans are super important for us to see what a little glimpse about what each of these candidates believe. And so now we're gonna go and hop right back onto the ballot and look a little bit closer. Now we know a little bit more about all these 5 people. We also have the option for a write-in, and that's for voters who think that it's not going to be one of the people that are on the ballot who are going to do the best job for the state of Idaho. And so they choose to write in any person and vote for that person instead. So now that you've learned a little bit more about these people, what do you think about the candidates for governor? Who do you think would do a good job? And you can go on and look a little bit more into their campaigns to find out more. But the last thing that we're going to look at today is when we scroll down, we see that Idaho, and when we vote, we're able to vote for not only people, but we're able to vote for ideas. And we have this idea right here to amend the Idaho Constitution. And this amendment would be called SJR 102. And the question that they want people to think about is, should the Idaho Congress and legislature be able to hold an organizational session following every general election to just prepare and get ready for their general session of Congress? And so to be able to have this pass, then they need lots of people, just like all the adults and all your parents, to say that this is a good idea. And then they'll be able to go through and amend this constitution so that they can meet. And so what do you think about that? Do you think that they should have this organizational session in after an election, or do you think it's not that important to be in the Idaho Constitution? Well, thank you so much for looking at the ballot with me today. I hope that you've learned so much more and that you were able to see that we are voting on people and ideas every year. And it's so important to do a little bit of research and dive into each of those things so that when you turn 18 and you're able to vote, then you'll be able to know what the vote is going to look like, and maybe a couple ideas about how you can look into what you're voting for.
Miss Ritchie, it's good to see you
Miss
again.
Brickmore, how are you?
I'm good. I just voted. I took your advice, I did some more research, and I voted on who I thought was best to lead.
I'm so glad to hear that. That's what I'm headed to do. And you guys can do research too to find out more about the candidates running in your local area, and we'll have some links in the description box below so that you can research that.